Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn Sarowick. Sejohn?
Hey everybody. What's going on, man?
Not much. It's a Sunday recording. It's a
Yeah.
Sunday brunch time recording, that's fun. I like recording at brunch time on a Sunday. I enjoy our early morning coffee chats where I get to hold my cup with both hands and warm them. But
Yeah.
yeah, brunch is fun too, right?
Oh yeah, no, I prefer the brunch time recordings because our normal evening recordings allow me to drink while we record, but brunch also allows for that. So cheers.
Here I was hoping that your senses might be sharpened recording a little bit earlier. Here's a question. Is a bacon cheeseburger brunch?
Uh, you mean like no, because
It's
bacon is broken
transcended
out of
breakfast, right?
it is it is broken out of the bounds of breakfast. Like bacon has not been a breakfast only food for quite a while now. So no, I now a bacon burger croissant maybe like if you
Ooh,
go
if we
somewhere and they
change
put it
the
on a
bread,
croissant,
huh? Ooh.
right? Yeah,
What
suddenly
about,
now we're
and if you
maybe
had the
back to
egg? If you had an egg to a burger?
well, you had a yeah, and I have had burgers that have had eggs on it that are definitely like evening burgers because an egg on a good hangover burger is a hangover prevention burger is key. But I think I think the presence of like a croissant and an egg would definitely merit that as a brunch sandwich.
Yeah. I don't know. I never really considered the fact that like a bacon cheeseburger is kind of more of a brunch cheeseburger than just a cheeseburger.
I mean, the entire thing is nonsense made up by humans anyway, right? Because if you take a bunch of beef and grind it down and put it into a patty shape, suddenly everybody's like, you can't have that for breakfast. But you do the same thing with pig, and everybody's like, yeah, that's a sausage patty. So like, where are we at, folks? Why?
I love a hamburger for breakfast. I think one of the biggest sins is that all of the fast food places you can't get a hamburger before 10:30.
Well, and again, it's because it's entirely social construction, right? Because if
Yeah.
you told somebody you wanted a burger before breakfast, they'd be like, "You animal!" It's just like, what? Okay, I'm sorry, no, I want a sausage and cheese patty on a McGriddle. That's what I want instead. It's the same friggin' thing, everybody. It's just a different animal. Now, you know who's got this right? Like we're saying this as if we're coming up with this idea, but good old Mr. Jack in the Box has already done this for decades. He's been on this game long before we came to the party.
I didn't know that. Honest, of all the fast food places, Jack in the Box is the only one I've never been to.
Oh, their whole shtick, like the thing that makes Jack in the Box stand out from anybody else is their entire menu is just available all the time. So their whole thing is you could do breakfast at any time, but also like in addition to that, you can just do late night stuff all the time. So you can just roll up and be like, yeah, I want three tacos, a burger, and all the breakfast sandwiches you can make. Like that's their whole like appeal, and God love them for it.
That is appealing to me. What is also appealing to me is the taco of it all, because the taco goes with everything.
Hmm.
And it sucks. It honestly sucks that I have to go to Taco Bell or Del Taco if I
Yeah.
want a like fast food taco. If I could get a taco, I mean, like when Burger King had tacos, I would be rocking on the Burger King taco. Mostly
Yeah.
because they'd put the beef and cheese in there and then they'd dip it in the deep fryer. So it's really more of an empanada situation there. Still delicious, still killing you slowly, but
As a man that has actually had McPizza, when everybody jokes about missing the McPizza, there's definitely merit to the idea though that some of these places should stay in their lane.
I used
People
to.
fucking love the McPizza, and I've had one once, and I don't know, maybe I'm missing something.
So the convenience of the McPizza, because we've been to Templeton together, right? The penny candy store
Oh yeah.
location. All right.
Hmm.
So to get that, I don't know what it is now because I'm sure they've changed all of the exit numbers on Route 2 in Massachusetts. But at the time, to go to Templeton, where I was living, you take exit 21. But right off of exit 22, there was a little McDonald's. And that McDonald's, for the entirety of the time that I lived in Templeton, so 3 years, served pizza the entire time. And I would get a McPizza from them if we went there.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that like pizza, as much as it is like a delicious food stuff, it's more of a desire. It's more of a craving that you're seeking to satiate. And we definitely have 4 amphibians from the sewers to thank for that, right? Um, like pizza became what pizza is in pop culture because of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So like as a kid, I want pizza, and my mother, rather than paying, and pizza was expensive in the 90s, right? Like that's something
It's
that
still kind of expensive, I'll be honest, but yes,
no,
yeah.
but I mean, but pizza as a whole was expensive. I mean, if you ever go to Domino's and don't use one of their deals, you're not wrong. It's like $20 for a large pie. But
Yeah.
then you buy 2 pies for $10 each, and they still get your $20. It's weird. But like those deals didn't really come into existence until the 2000s.
Yeah, late 2000s even.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the idea of the $5 meal box pizza and things like that from Pizza Hut and stuff. Like that stuff didn't show up cuz like I think they caught on to the fact that everybody started to realize how like for a fast convenience option for dinner, pizza ain't it actually. Like a lot of pizza places, I mean especially out here, this might be the Utah effect more than anything, but you're not guaranteed to get your pizza for like an hour or more. And then on top of that, like your options out here are not stellar. I've got some pizza feelings out in Utah that I'm still kind of working through right now. I have found one or two places that are awesome pizza places. Nobody at me and tell me how there's good pizza in Utah. I know there can be good pizza found, but it's a fucking challenge.
Finding good pizza in general is a fucking challenge, right? The reason why
Yeah, yeah.
Domino and Pizza Hut and Little Caesars, I'm going to say that they're part of the game now because fast and ready, like I walk into Little Caesars, I walk out with a fucking pizza. That's convenient. There's a
I would say that
convenience
that makes
factor.
them kind of not in the conversation because the fact that you can actually do that with them, that
Well,
makes them rise above the rest of the pizza. But
well,
yeah, no,
I get what you're saying, but I think that they're a significant player. I think before like Little Caesars wasn't a player, but in addition to the hot and ready model that they've always kind of played with, they've also slowly been improving their pizza with
yeah,
better tasting sauce and fresher ingredients. But it's one of those situations where like pizza is a craving. You're satiating a desire to have pizza, right? So the Mick pizza at the time in the 90s for like $3.99, I would shut the fuck up about wanting pizza.
yeah, yeah,
And like there is real value in having your 8-year-old kid just shut up about wanting pizza.
yeah. Yeah, there's definitely merit to the just the shut up buy, right? Like it's the same thing with McDonald's when a kid just really is just asking for a Happy Meal 1,000 times over. At some point, it's worth your sanity to just buy the kid a fucking Happy Meal. I'm not saying stuff your kids full of McDonald's. We all know that that's terrible, and yeah, but nobody's gonna think you're a terrible parent if you need one night where you're just like, you know what, tonight we're just buying a box of tacos from Taco Bell because everybody just needs this. I actually was literally just talking about this with a guy yesterday. Everybody out here has big families, right? So like 6 kids, right? And he was talking about how the idea of growing up with 6 kids in the house, and then he was at an age where he would have friends over all the time. So his parents were literally feeding an army of children, like 10 kids minimum on a regular basis. And so the idea of these types of deals where like the 3 tacos for $1 type stuff from Del Taco and stuff like that would become like saving graces for these parents, you know? And that is really, I think, more than the idea of the kid asking for the pizza. I think that's where the idea of the pizza really kind of started to explode, was the idea that you could feed a lot of more people for that meal. So yes, it's more expensive, but as we have kind of talked about with many other conversations, if you're already paying to feed a family of 6 plus, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
if somebody comes over,
Yeah.
then you're already spending an exorbitant amount of money. It's the same thing with going to the movies. It's the same thing with buying a video game. This idea that the amount of money something costs, actually your view on that changes when there's more people involved. And one of the big things out here in the Midwest, and maybe something that a lot of people on the coasts don't often think about about the middle here, is that families are big. And so like a lot of those costs that we complain about are like nothing to these people. I mean, you're talking about people that spend $300 at Costco on a good day twice a week, right? Like they just got to get their kids fed, especially if their kids are like 14, right? So like it's a weird thing. I will say this about pizza though. one of the big things about pizza for me is it breaks one of the basic rules of business, which is why it makes no sense that it's as successful as a concept as it is. The idea, one of the biggest ideas in business, is that your product should be able to hit two of the following three. It should either be good, cheap, or quick, right? And the idea that like one of those is going to have to be sacrificed for the other two to shine. Pizza is only ever one of those things. A good pizza is often expensive and takes forever. A cheap pizza is often not good and sometimes not that quick around here. And then like a quick pizza can often be super expensive and it's not going to taste great. So like pizza has a hard time following that basic rule of thumb that we should all kind of expect from the world of capitalism. And the fact that it can't do that is kind of ridiculous, that people still are out there going like, yeah, we do pizza about twice a week. And it's like, how do you do that to yourself? Not even like from a health perspective, just as from a mental perspective of dealing with pizza delivery. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm glad that we've cut down pizza to kind of once every 2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like a little treat then, right? And
Yeah.
we go a little bigger, right? Because generally we're getting from Domino's, especially in the pandemic environment, right? Where it's
Right.
going to be delivery. You're not going out if you can avoid it.
Right.
And it ends up being like 2-3 meals because of that. So it's, I mean, like, there's a way to make it work, but you're not wrong. Pizza's weird, and it really is kind of crazy when you think about like pizza was kind of nothing before the Ninja Turtles came along. And that's
They
big.
order pizza in ET, I'm pretty sure.
They do order pizza in ET, but that's not that. Come on, market penetration wise, right? Those four guys, those four Ninja Turtles. Sorry, Donatello. I'm starting to not acknowledge you as I get older and older.
All right, all right.
Or Leonardo.
I would say most people would be leaving Mikey on the floor, but okay.
Michelangelo is everyone's second favorite Ninja Turtle. I'm working on a study. I don't have enough evidence yet, right? But there is, if he is not your favorite Ninja Turtle, he is almost certainly your second favorite Ninja Turtle.
Oh man,
Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle, Sejohn?
I mean, it's got to be Raph. I mean, it's always Raph.
And who's your second favorite? Be honest.
God. Michelangelo, only because he's usually the one driving the van.
He'd be a good hang. Michelangelo would be a good hang. And that's pretty much just the fact of it, right? Is like Raphael and I, we could probably be friends, right? Because it'd be, if Raphael were here, if Raphael the Ninja Turtle, this is the world I'm living in currently, were here with me right now, he would probably fuel my instincts to be like, I fucking hate people, I need to do something. And he'd be like, why don't we go beat up bad guys? And then suddenly I'm a masked vigilante hanging out with Raphael, right?
Like those guys are never good at being friends. I mean, even when they meet people like them. I mean, like in the example, like look at him and Casey. They're not exactly like they are brothers to the end. Like he becomes more of a brother to Raph than any of the other turtles in some stories, right? But at the same time, they never get along. But like to a larger extent, right? That type of person, even in the real world, like let's take this out of comic books and talk about it in the real world. That person that's just like, I hate being around people, but like I need some alone time. Like it all sounds great. You're like, yeah, you're the kind of person I can relate to, but you're never the kind of person I want to spend time with. Because I know me. I hate me. I don't need another me.
Right, exactly. Which is why, if you gotta call a Ninja Turtle to hang out, even though, like, man, I get Raphael. I get his life. I'm calling Michelangelo, because he's gonna be like, party! Woo! Yeah. And he's gonna bring the pizza. And he's gonna have saved $3, because it was less than 10 minutes to arrive.
I also feel like you're not gonna have a holier than thou attitude and also correct everything that I say, and I feel like that covers the other two pretty nicely.
That's solid. Donatello is the Ted Mosby of the fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Well, actually, shut the fuck up, Donatello. Do machines. That's why they gotta put him in his place in the song, right? And Leonardo, God, it'd be like, hey, yeah, he would like, oh, we could be training. It's like, for training for what, Leonardo? where we are watching Friends with Benefits, but we could be training while we watch it. What does that mean? Are you propositioning me, Leonardo? Is that what this is? Is that what training is?
Oh man.
Speaking of hypotheticals.
All this is to say, I had a cannoli and a beer for breakfast, so like that's where I'm at with my life. But sorry,
I had a Dunkaroo and a new Snapple for breakfast.
All right.
The new Snapple tastes less fruity than the old Snapple. Just like everything that we brought back from the 90s, it's kind of a watered-down version of what it once was. And the real facts, it's like they're not even trying anymore. I sent you a picture of one. In Venus, it snows metal. Do you mean on Venus? Or are you telling me the scientists at Snapple know what's going on inside of the planet of Venus?
And inside of the planet of Venus, it snows. Man, that the merit of that type of discovery, like, does that mean that maybe there's a planet out there that we maybe can't live on, but in? Like, if the ecosystem is, if there's water, right? Like, that's the big thing that we're looking for.
I like that. I like that water is kind of what we're looking for on one of these outside planets because, like, we can bring our own air.
Yeah, we figured out, like, I guess there's this idea that the rest of the terraforming we could figure out, but the one thing we don't want to do is haul a fuck ton of water. And anybody that's gone camping knows that that is the bitch of it. 5 gallons of water is, like, way too much, not worth your time. And so, like, if you could figure out a way that to find a place where water already exists, you could bring the food, you could bring the tank. You don't need the water, though.
Yeah, I never really thought of it in terms of camping when we're going out intergalactically to settle planets.
I mean, that's all that camping is just a small form version of like settling somewhere, right?
I feel like there should be more camping in astronaut training. Like, fuck if you can handle 7 Gs. Can you stay overnight in the woods?
I think part of it though is that it's not up to the it's almost like if you're an astronaut, like you're the guy that is being asked to come along on the camping trip because we need a 4th. So don't worry, we've already planned it all. We've already got all the gear. You just need to hop in the car. Like that guy, like we need somebody to pay for gas on the way and somebody to hang out with around the fire at night. You know, like you're not there because you're good at camping. You're there because you're good at everything else.
Dude, you know what it actually is though? It's like 3 12-year-olds going to a 16-year-old and being like, we need you to drive us to this campsite.
Yeah,
you need to drive. We have the car. We have all the supplies. We just need someone who can drive.
I feel like we're in like the early stages of workshopping Armageddon, like the script for Armageddon, and then this is how we end up with Oilers being the ones going to.
Yeah, I mean, why teach a bunch of astronauts how to drill when you could just send drillers? You know what movie is 29 years old? Yesterday? Death Becomes Her.
Oh man.
It might be 26. It's just, but it's like 20 some odd years old.
I remember for like a hot second people losing their shit over the technology of that film. The CGI use in that film and mixed with the practical effects was like at the time it was just early enough that like not every movie was doing it, so it was wild when a movie was. And then the idea, I think, that it was the kind of work being put into not like a big budget blockbuster film, right? Like it's not fucking Jurassic Park where like you're talking about like a mass appeal. You're not talking about the idea of mass like storytelling epic effects. Like it's wild to me that there was a time period in which the idea of using like CGI and practical effects in a movie that really is just 3 people on stage like that was it a play? If you told me that there was a play version of Death Becomes Her, I'd believe you.
It's like a fully original work,
yeah,
which is the coolest thing about it. But you're not wrong.
Yeah,
right. It's essentially a 1-act play.
Right, and so like the idea of that amount of tech money and work being put behind something on a small scale for all intents and purposes.
You know what? Hold up. Can I time out for a second though? It is a play. It's fucking Blythe Spirit. Like, 'cause that's basically what it is that it's Blythe's spirit.
Yeah.
So, not to be like a total jerk, but the old wife coming back and living eternally,
Yeah,
it's Blythe's spirit. So,
yeah, Noel Coward style dry comedy that only works with about 1/3 of its audience. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would.
I will never forget, and this was not the intention of me bringing it up, them being...
I know exactly what you're going to talk about, but go ahead. Sorry. Go.
Oh, no. If you know exactly what I'm going to talk about, why don't you reach into my brain and pluck it out?
About them being so worried that people were not going to get the comedy in that show that they planted somebody in the audience to laugh at the jokes.
Yeah, that's the exact story I was going to tell.
About it every time. I was just about to be like, I know one person that would laugh at it because it was her job.
It really, like, it blew my mind. I was so against it too. Like, they asked me to like stand in for that person. I'm like, I refuse to do that. That's not how theater works, right? Don't do the show if you don't think an audience will understand it.
Oh man.
Sorry, that again, not the intention or anything like that. But you know, it really is. Death Becomes Her. The whole thing of it is that it's just like a normal story. Like it's everyday mundanity until you get to the fact that they can't die for some reason.
Yeah, something is stopping them from dying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, apparently the age rejuvenation serum that they're taking also keeps you alive forever. It's not the best movie. It's
well. No, but I was actually about to say it'd actually be really interesting to go back and look at it now, because the other thing is that it's very much a story about the idea of privilege, right? And the idea of the elite having access to this ability that other people do not, and how it gets abused by them. So like there is actually a very interesting thought there that like I never applied to it, because as you pointed out, it's a movie from almost 30 years ago at this point. Yeah. And so like I'm curious to know if there's maybe some merit in like rewatching it and talking about it as maybe being a little too ahead of its time for a lot of reasons. I mean, even as we were just talking about the technology aspect of it, like being one of those things that like now every fucking movie has CGI in it. Every movie has a moment where they've gone in and cleaned up something goofy. Hell, the new Blythe Spirit that's going to be coming out any day now because they made it 3 years ago and keep sitting on it. Maybe they're worried nobody's going to laugh, but even that is going to...
I know someone who will. Sorry.
But even that's guaranteed to have CGI in it, right? And so like, so the idea of it being something kind of ahead of its time in a lot of ways, including even story and things like that. And I mean, like, for anybody that doesn't know this movie, let's just, like, it's Meryl Streep, it's Bruce Willis, it's who's
Goldie Hawn.
Goldie Hawn, right? Yeah.
It's
are you
huge fucking stars for 92. Yeah. Is it 92? Can you confirm the year? I'm pretty sure it's 1992, which is why it'd be before Jurassic Park. And I could totally see Steven Spielberg seeing Death Becomes Her and like, I can finally make the dinosaur movie.
This is it. I mean, and it is Zemeckis, so like you know, yeah, it is 92.
Yeah, okay.
And so like
so it's 29 years.
Yeah, and so like Zemeckis making this movie, who's always been kind of that guy that pushes technology before it's ready, but that's okay. We need somebody to do that. It's just an observation.
We don't have Space Jam if we didn't frame Roger Rabbit.
But yeah, so like 92, Zemeckis gets in and does this thing. I guarantee you that part of, because Jurassic Park, when it was originally conceived, it was going to be done like old school Harryhausen, like straight up all like go motion, not stop motion, very different. It's exactly the same except the models move on their own. But go motion was going to be the idea for it, and then it was the advancements in CGI that Steven Spielberg was like, I guess we could try that, and then boom, like that became like the big thing, right?
All right. As much as I would love to, sight unseen, talk about Death Becomes Her, here's what I am going to do, right? And we're the Say Report, so this is totally on brand for us. Very special episode, July 2022, Death Becomes Her.
All right, okay.
That's something to look forward to, right? 30th anniversary, and we're going to talk about it. So look forward to that, because Sejohn's not wrong. It's definitely one of those films that probably deserves a rewatch and a recontextualization in a world 30 years older. And also, I don't want to burn material on it, especially when I'm like completely unprepared to discuss it.
Yeah, God knows we never talk about things unprepared and sight unseen on this show.
No, but like,
No, no,
but this
I,
is
I
this is
get what
this
you're
one
saying.
feels like it
This
could be
this
good.
this one deserves the research.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So I'm going to move to the hypothetical that I woke up at 3 in the morning and I wrote it in a notepad because
Okay.
the dream I had just had.
I thought we were already in it. I was like,
Oh,
okay,
no,
hypothetically, you wake up at 3 a.m. and
Okay. So the dream that I had that leads to this hypothetical was we were still us. We were still Devon and Sejohn, and we still did the Say report, but Godzilla, King Kong, and other kaijus exist in the world. Maybe not under those names.
oh, so so it's just us, just in like there's just monsters
One,
also.
one of the everything in the Say report show about everything. We're like, you fucking see that this lizard thing attacked Japan? Like, how do you feel about lizards attacking Japan? Should America have some way to defend themselves against lizards?
I was about to give you shit about this because I was gonna be like, this is just like every time somebody tells you you should hear this dream, and then 2 seconds into it they realize, no, never mind, you didn't really need to hear this dream. But I'm gonna go with you on this parade. So I have to
Well,
ask
no.
for some clarification.
Can I tell you? Let me finish the dream before you ask for the clarification. In the
Okay.
dream, we were recording our podcast in a world where the kaijus exist, and during the recording, I fell asleep, and that's when I woke up in the real world. So I might still be dreaming in a dream.
Oh, so it's like that really weird Jason Isaacs show where he falls asleep in one world and his wife is dead, and then wakes up in the other and his son is dead, right?
What the
Like
fuck was
that.
the name of that? I remember that show. I kind of want to rewatch it again, recontextualize.
I think it was one of those weird ones that like anybody paying attention was like, this has a lot of potential, and then you know what that means. Studio
Yep.
came in and cut it after like 6 episodes.
Like Dr.
Um,
Face Hands. Remember that one? Do no harm.
oh man. So my question for some clarification on your hypothetical:
Mhm.
do we live in a world in which kaijus have just always existed, or are we living in a world in which kaijus have just recently appeared? Because that changes what we would do on the show.
I feel like it was a world where we grew up with kaijus in the water.
So it would just be another, just like, oh, Japan just dealing with it again.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So kind of like the nuclear like reactor explosion that they had like a few years ago, right? That idea that like this is something that has happened in the world, but maybe it doesn't happen every day. So we would still talk about it, but it would not be in the context of just like, where did these lizards come from? It'd be like, oh man, somebody wasn't paying attention on the lizard boats and one got by. Damn.
I feel like okay, to slip into kaiju world, Devon. Like, why are people surprised? Right? Kaiju have existed in this world since at least the 1930s, and we act like it's a brand new thing every time one of these attacks happen.
Yeah, but we probably live in an existence in which we assume that this is taken care of for us. Like we assume that like there is safety protocols in place to stop this kind of thing from happening. So when it doesn't, it kind of shows the cracks in the system and the cracks in the kaiju system, and that scares the shit out of us when we really start to think about it.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be an everyday thing, right? But it just happened to be that when I went to sleep, I dipped into the world as we were recording an episode where like kaijus had just happened with the kaiju.
I mean, maybe that's just it, though, right? It's like maybe all of your dreams exist in this kaiju infested world. It's just that usually they're handled.
Usually
right?
they're handled, and then all of the sudden, it's just revealed that there's huge oversights in the kaiju security protocols.
I mean, I feel like that would be like well, I feel like it would be some like J.J. Abrams style twist nowadays that he like feels like is a Rod Serling style like Twilight Zone twist. Is like, also after listening to the show for 5 years, it's taken place in a kaiju universe the entire time. And you're just like, this does nothing to the story, JJ. It's, yeah, but it was going on the entire time.
right?
I really could have just watched this movie with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and enjoyed it without the aliens, though. It's okay.
Don't worry, the original script, that was what it was about. I added the kaiju. God damn it, J.J. Abrams. This is why we didn't have you make the second in the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. Because you were going to be like, spoilers, Star Wars is all a diorama at a high school science fair. What does that add? Just think about it. Nothing matters. Jesus, J.J. Abrams. Well, I think if there were a checklist, dunk on J.J. Adams, we covered that. What have you been up to? How's your life been lately?
It's fine. My world was thrown with a. We live in a world of Stanley Nichols and Dink Doinks and Dogecoin, Dev. And I was listening back to our show last week and realized we never talked about the fact that like Jeff Bezos went to space without us. like what's going on? I forgot Richard Branson was still alive. I thought he died on the top of a mountain somewhere, and then I realized I was probably thinking of that scene from Mr. Deeds.
That's a really nice cut for a Mr. Deeds reference. And Jeff Bezos did not go to space without us. He definitely listened to an episode of the Say Report while he was in space.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about what he would have been listening to, and we know that he asked us personally to be on his platform, so obviously he brought us along for the ride.
I can't think. I'm trying to think of while it was up, so it was probably our Black Widow episode. And one of the astronauts is like, well, I haven't seen it yet. And he's like, well, too fucking bad. We're listening to the Say Report while we go to space.
And you never will because you work for Amazon.
Yeah, right. This is the only way I'm going to experience Black Widow is how Devon and Sejohn retell it.
Oh shit. We're gonna rewatch Miss Maisel again. We've watched the entire series like 3 times, dude.
All right, is Miss Maisel or is the Say Report? Which one do you prefer? I guess the Say Report. It's something new. Can you imagine watching Miss Maisel more than one time? I mean, for me,
the comedy's all blown at the first time around. So like,
I'd have to imagine watching it a first time to imagine watching it a second time. I don't know. Something about, I can't believe Bosch worked for me as well as it did. Because, Amazon Prime Originals, they tend to not connect with me. And Bosch was the first one that did. I don't know what just happened. I'm sorry.
No, Amazon Prime Originals are a weird beast because, I feel like there's definitely merit to them, and I feel like everybody else is watching them but me, right? It feels like the same way that in the mid 2000s, everybody was watching HBO originals and Showtime originals, and I didn't have access to them because, I wasn't paying for that. We were in college, right? But everybody was talking about them as if everybody was watching them, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure that they're great. I'm not gonna, give me a couple of years when streaming services are available and maybe I can catch up with you guys. If only I knew them.
I understand that you guys are watching Flight of the Conchords, but can I interest you in a shortened season of Aaron Sorkin writing for a sketch comedy show? Matthew Perry from Friends is there. Now you're gonna watch Flight of the Conchords? All right, cool. I had to try.
Oh man,
it can't just be me watching.
But yeah, no, man. I spent this week trying to figure out why I couldn't find movies streaming anywhere, and then I realized we've hit a point in where movies are just coming out in theaters again. I was looking forward to watching G.I. Joe,
Snake Eyes.
Snake Eyes. Thank you. A lot of snake imagery in the Joe universe, huh? Never really thought about that.
Cobra is the name of the villains.
I know, that's what I mean. But yeah, so Snake Eyes came out, and I don't know why I was expecting it to be available somewhere. Turns out, no, they went whole hog and you're gonna see this in theaters, and I don't know if that was good for them or not because I've heard some unfortunate things about people that were just I made a huge effort for the first time to go to a movie after COVID, and wasted it on Snake Eyes. I feel like it's the kind of movie that I'm very much going to enjoy, but even I personally am just like, I don't know if I've got it in me to go to a theater right now with like variants and resurgences to like go and see this particular movie. But more to that point, like, but to a more like artsier film that is apparently still like blowing everybody away is Green Knight came out this week, and I can't find that fuck all anywhere either on streaming. So that's another one that I've got to consider if I want to go to a movie theater to see.
I would like to address Snake Eyes first because it weirdly touches on something we talked about last episode, maybe even just after we finished recording, and that is Ghostbusters Afterlife. And we were like sitting there wondering when Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Let's break the seal on this. Now we better start drinking our water because I've been holding it for 2 years now to talk about this movie. But I guess now let's do it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. No. Like, I'm not ready to talk about it or anything like that. But we did like wonder, when is it coming? And apparently November, because as soon as I posted last week's episode, the new trailer came out and everybody lost their collective mind. And I'm like, oh, okay. And one of the issues that I saw with Ghostbusters Afterlife was they had the Ghostbuster toys ready to go in 2020, expecting the movie to come out. And then the toys just sat on shelves and became clearanced off because there was no movie to drive sales of those figures, right? Snake Eyes, right? A movie that, like, G.I. Joe exists to sell action figures. The story and plot line of G.I. Joe exists to sell action figures. That's its sole reason for being, right? So the Snake Eyes movie comes out, and they had promised all of this, that there will be Snake Eye toys in the stores for the release of the movie. And I pre-ordered a Henry Gold Snake Eyes because I wanted one, right? I wanted, even if just to do Crazy Rich Asians dioramas, right? I need that Henry Golding head.
But with him with the knives, with the swords on his back. Yeah, okay.
I mean, Last Christmas becomes a very different movie if he had a sword. So it's just one of those situations where, like, I'm very excited for it. And then the Friday that Snake Eyes is supposed to release, I receive an email from the people I have it pre-ordered with being like, hey, just a heads up, this is delayed till October. And it's like, so you guys had the action figures ready to go for Ghostbusters, and that movie didn't come. And then this movie, which, like, they put a fucking flag in the sand, like, Snake Eyes is coming out in July. I'm trying to do that, 23rd, Snake Eyes comes out. That's what we're doing. We're not budging on this. It's what's happening. They missed the deadline with the fucking figures. Like, and the G.I. Joe figures, right? Like, they've already been, like, the hardest things to find in terms of toys. The fact that I have a Roadblock and Gung Ho on my desk while I'm recording still boggles my mind, because you never see them on store shelves. They come out and they're sold out. So, like, this was supposed to be the shift for that, and they missed their goal, right? And one of the things with, like, these action figures and stuff like that, action figures and collectibles are a way for the kid to take the movie with them.
Right.
So, like, I can't see the movie, but I can have the figure and I can still interact and you can still get money from me. Them missing the ability to release the toys is crazy to me.
Like, well, yeah, and especially because, like, what kid in October of this year is going to be asking for a Snake Eyes toy? You know, maybe what they're hoping to do is maybe align it up with, like, the home release, but, like, man.
I mean, that's what it sounds like, because it's 3 months from when the movie releases, right? And I think with that whole flag in the sand thing, they were saying, so by doing that, we are also ensuring a 90-day window for theatrical exhibition. It's not going to go to streaming right away, because we want Snake Eyes to be the movie. We want Snake Eyes to be a real American hero and drive audiences back to the cinema.
It's become the crazy anti-mask uncle that you have on Facebook is essentially what it was like. Fuck everything,
right? And it almost felt like it was, this movie's not going to do that well, like every other G.I. Joe live action film, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not surprising at this point. And so they're like, we can delay them. We don't need to rush out the toys because nobody's going to see this movie and say, I need the toys. So, like, we just want to avoid them getting clearanced off and maybe build some goodwill with a cult following, and then suddenly they're available.
Well, that's true. If they released them now, the toys would not be available during the holiday season. By the time the holiday season came around, these would be the ones getting shoved out of the way for the, I imagine, re-release of the Ghostbusters toys. Although God knows they re-releasing a toy is not as easy as it sounds.
I mean, that's the plan, though. There were all sorts of announcements about new Ghostbuster toys in the wake of the new Afterlife thing. So, like, they want Ghostbusters to be the Christmas toy again. And I just don't see it happening. Like, I have no idea with Afterlife what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Even after the trailers and everything.
Yeah, I gotta say though, from moment one, I've had this really weird feeling that I have not been able to put into words until I saw the new trailer and I realized really what it is. We have many a times talked about Ghostbusters, our love of Ghostbusters, including like novelizations and all of that silly shit, right? Toys, TV shows, comics, all of that. One of the things that we have consistently talked about, that one of the key things to what makes it a Ghostbusters story that feels so good, is that they are first and foremost exterminators. They are blue-collar dudes that you call up on the phone and make an appointment with, and sometimes they can't get to you right away because they've got 3 other houses they got to go and exterminate today. But they'll get to you, don't worry. Like, they are the blue-collar city worker. That seems nowhere in this new story. Not only that, it seems like this story can't allow that. So it's not like, oh, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe the trailers aren't doing it justice. Like, I don't want to say that just because it's not in New York City, it's not a Ghostbusters movie, but like, that does kind of sum up nicely what I'm feeling right now. The fact that it doesn't take place in New York City is a huge knock against it right now for me. I'm just going to put that out there now because we're clearly going to talk about this more later, especially when it comes out. But I want it to be in the water that I am already feeling weird, specifically because it seems to be missing what we have talked about being a key element to the Ghostbusters oeuvre.
I mean, especially when you consider that Ghostbusters 2, the city of New York is a character, right?
Mm-hmm.
To sound like the worst elevator pitch for a romantic comedy. It is. New York is an important part of Ghostbusters 2.
If anybody ever asks, what do you mean the city is another point to movie like Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters 2 and say, like, think about that movie taking place anywhere else and it doesn't work, right? Like, the necessity of having it be New York is palpable throughout that entire film. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a character because it needs to. It also, I mean, specifically in Ghostbusters 2, the slime is living, breathing New York.
Living, breathing New York.
Like,
anger, right?
Yeah, it's like the slime is reflective of New York. It's crazy. It's just nuts. So, but that being said, as somebody who like really went whole hog into the IDW comics 10 years ago, they did some really good stories that took place not in New York City.
For sure.
They did a haunted road trip sort of thing where they were like dealing with extinction level events across the country. And it was interesting to see that, yes, all of this stuff does happen in New York, and there's a reason why it happens in New York, but New York isn't special to these types of hauntings.
For sure, and that's where I started with my idea that it's not necessarily about the idea of them being in New York, but it is about them being these kinds of, as I said, like these blue collar workers that you find in the phone book to call up and come. You don't think about them on a regular basis. You only call a plumber when your plumbing breaks, right? Like, that idea of who they are is so key to a Ghostbusters story for me. And I have to imagine that even though they might not have been in New York, they were still just these guys in a fucking like work truck, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that was the whole point of it, is like essentially the city of New York has contracted you out to help with these other situations. And then the whole big thing was they did that so the city of New York, in the absence of the Ghostbusters, could set up their own ghost smashers who would actually have government oversight and not just be an independent like entity existing within the city, state, and municipality of New York.
See, that's why they should have started a union back before they left.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like those stories definitely have room in the Ghostbuster universe, and it's one of the reasons why the Midwestern setting, from the very small amount I know, interests me. But then what doesn't interest me is all of the stuff that like is why the Ghostbusters video game fell on its face in 2009 and then again in 2019.
Yeah.
Because the nostalgia stuff is fun, right? Oh, Stay Puffed again. But like if you're only resting on your laurels, how are you growing?
Yeah. I also the same crowd out there that is talking about how this is going to be the quote unquote movie to save the franchise, which is a ridiculous conversation, and I don't want to get into that right now. But that same group is also the first group to point out that when a movie like does like a Muppet Babies version, and it's just like, hey, it's just a bunch of kids as Ghostbusters. In any other situation, I feel like that's what we would be hearing right now. But because of some of the leftover residual bad energy pink goo under the sewers of Ghostbusters, like because of 2016's Ghostbusters, we're not hearing that. And so it feels like there's a lot of people being extremely disingenuous in their excitement for this movie simply because it's not that movie, and that feels super gross too. So there's a lot going on there, and there's a reason why I said that now that you've broken the seal, like there's going to be conversations about this that I'm not going to love, man. Because man, I just want to fucking enjoy a movie. I'm the kind of guy that in any other universe, this would be amazing news. Other people would be telling me I was out of my mind for being excited for Ghostbusters Afterlife because of A, B, and C, all of these reasons I just listed. But I feel like it's just fucking, we're in like the backwards universe. I might as well like shave down to a goatee and go out and become my evil self at this point.
Which would actually, on most levels, be a better version of yourself. But like
Ouch.
you'd kick puppies. Which there's nothing more evil than just kicking random puppies. Not ouch. I have to go for the joke first, and it was an easy joke to go for, Sejohn.
No, I love it. I'm successful. I'm slim. I have a sports car, but every now and then I see a puppy on the side of the road and I stop my sports car. I get out and just look down at it and just go, bah!
He just can't stop himself with kicking puppies. Everything else about him, great fucking dude. But he kicks the shit out of puppies. Oh man. As much as I want to talk about the Green Knight here, let's do it. I was gonna transition off of Bill Murray because he's in Ghostbusters,
I
but
don't know when I'm
we
gonna get
can
to see
save
it.
it.
Like that's the big thing for me. So like I don't know if there's too much I want to say about it. Super excited for it. Like I love this story. I didn't know much about the story until the movie kind of started kind of bubbling up about a year or two ago. And so all of these scholars that have been super excited for like a historical like horror like Arthurian tale. Like there's been a lot of excitement in academia about a movie, and that's rare that that like I get to that side of me gets to get involved in the conversation. So like I've learned a lot about it, and I'm very very excited. It looks beautiful. I love Dev Patel. Like there's amazing things about it, but I just don't have it in me right now. Like I pushed myself to go and see Black Widow in a theater because things were looking up, but the second things stopped looking up, I can't do it again. I just don't have it in me right now.
I'm so jealous of you right now. I'm so jealous that you're approaching Green Knight from the direction you're getting to approach Green Knight from. Because everybody who brought it to my attention was like, it looks like a fucking Dark Souls movie. And like, hand hit palm. Because, hand hit palm. Face hit palm. Face palm is what I was trying to say. But I didn't work. Because the residual, like, anger and annoyance that like that's what people took away from the trailers for the
Yeah, that's
movie.
weird. I
Where
did this. This is the first time hearing this.
yeah,
Just to
right.
put you on
And that's the whole thing, right? Everybody has their unique experiences. So like I mean it's going in the Green Knight, right? It's a public domain story that I read for the first time in 2004 off of Wikipedia and loved because it's a
yeah.
very interesting story.
And there's so many different interpretations out there that like one of the most famous ones was that Tolkien himself, when he was in school and studying Arthurian history,
Yeah.
like wrote his own version of this story. Like that is the level at which this kind of like legend has permeated like English literature, shall I say.
One course I don't know. I think I ended up dropping this course because the first thing we studied was Gawain and the Green Knight, and like the level that I was willing to approach it, not even the professor was like ready for that. And like I'm not paying for a course where like I'm more excited about the subject matter than my professor. Like
Yeah.
that seems weird to me. And like and that's the thing about college, right? Is that like, oh, this should be an interesting thing. Oh my god, this is what we're studying. And then I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this and this interpretation and all of these, because it was just something that I came upon and enjoyed. And then I thought, oh, it'll be fun to like talk about it academically. And then
Right.
no, like I was denied the option to do that. Like
Hmm.
it didn't happen. And then when everybody was approaching me like, it looks like a video game, it looks like Dark Souls, it's going to be fucking badass. And I'm like, so it's just another denial of my ability to finally discuss this story that I really care about and like is probably the best Arthurian legend outside of like King Arthur. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I think that what's really beautiful about it is that in addition to giving you a really good hefty dose of Arthur and the Knights, what they were doing when they weren't looking for Excalibur and then all that shit, right? When they weren't on their holy tour, like it gives you a view of what was going on with them and the ways in which they interacted with the world. But then on top of that, it's got this beautiful like darkness to those stories that is extremely like it's very lacking in a lot of interpretations of Arthur's stories, right?
yeah.
Like the ways in which this story can go dark, depending on whose version you're reading, are very interesting. And I was concerned at first that the movie was maybe going to lean too heavy into like a horror aspect until some more stuff started to come out about the movie, and I realized that no, in a lot of ways it feels like The Fall for me, a Lee Pace movie from,
Hmm.
geez, 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe even longer than that. But it's this gorgeous film that has very dark elements to it. And outside of it, like reading about it, you would think like this is fucked up. It's about a dude that like falls off a horse in 1950s when he's a stuntman and he's like in the hospital recovering and he's like telling this fantasy story to this young girl, but he's addicted to the medicine that they're giving him. He's an asshole. So like the story is just full of just terrible people. And you think like that doesn't sound fun. And then you watch it and you're just like, "Oh, okay. There's there's a the visual storytelling of this movie does much more justice to it than the oral." Right? And I feel like that's what's going on with the movie. And part of the reason I'm so excited to see it is I feel like no matter what kind of like oral interpretation I hear about this film, I'm not going to really understand this film until I have it in front of my eyeballs.
Right, which is hopefully one of the things that, like, I feel like that's one of the points of Gawain and the Green Knight and why there's been so many interpretations and reimaginings and, like, explorations of it. And for this to be one of the first times that it's kind of gotten, like, a major motion picture interpretation,
Yeah.
like, it's exciting, but, like, I'm like, I'll have to see it, I'll have to make my own things. But now that, like, you're not wrong, now that things are not looking up, I don't want to go see it in theaters
Yeah.
right now. I will wait and I will see it on my own terms. But I mean, thank you. I do have to thank you because you brought up Green Knight, and I'm like, I don't really want to talk about it. But what you brought up and brought to my life regarding Green Knight has renewed my faith in it, possibly capturing what I love about the story.
I don't think anybody making that movie went into it intending to do anything Dark Souls-esque. Anybody interpreting that, like, hey man, like if that's what you see, that's interesting. Like let's talk about that. But I don't think that there's any intention that this is for a Dark Souls audience. Like I don't think that's what they're doing with that movie at all.
No, I mean, it's sort of like, I'm like, well, and that, like, the thing that was confirmed for me recently is that it's an adaptation of Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yeah.
Because I heard Green Knight and then I saw some of the visuals and I'm like, oh, so it's like the Birch but a knight. That's
Yeah.
cool, I guess. And then like when I had the confirmation that is Gawain and the Green Knight and it's just being called Green Knight, I'm like, oh, okay. So I definitely need to see it, and it's just other people's interpretation based on what they saw when all we really had were visuals. Because
Yeah,
like the first trailer was just visual.
yeah.
I don't know, but I am excited. And I'm going to jump on that Segway train that we set up with Bill Murray. Actually, I'm not, because I'm thinking about somebody said, it's not fair. If you miss a train, you have to, like the second, like you see the train pull away, you have to wait the longest amount possible to catch the next train. And that does seem like a disservice. We should figure that out in 2021. Like, if you could wait like half the time. I'm kidding. Somebody wrote, I read that this morning, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, missing trains sucks, right?
That
Imagine
concept hurts my head. Like you somehow deserve like
like
a mystery train to
you,
show up and just help you
you
because
want to
you were
talk
late.
about privilege, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. But I'm thinking about New York, and I'm thinking about 1982 New York, and I'm thinking about Michael Dorsey and Dorothy Michaels and Jeff Slater. And all of this is because I watched Tootsie yesterday.
Oh
Tootsie was the
man. All
Decker
right.
Saturday classic.
Man, Tootsie. I have not seen Tootsie in a long while. Like, how does at the time I watched it, it was getting a resurgence as a interesting fuck yeah, like empowerment of otherness film. I don't know if it would still get that interpretation today, does it?
So the first thing I want to say, right, is based on the lives that you and I have led, like that movie connects with me on a bunch of fucking levels,
Hmm.
right? And I imagine it would connect with you on some similar levels, right? Knowing these creatives who like all they seek to do is create and like going whatever length in order to work and
Yeah,
finance their dreams, like
yeah,
like that really spoke to me. And I mean, it's Dustin Hoffman. He gives 110%. He's a method actor, and he is so into the character and everything that he is doing. And like, I read interviews with him afterwards about having to develop the Dorothy Michaels character and just what that meant for him, and how it really opened his eyes to all of the like sexism and sexist things that he not only witnessed but also helped to like make normal and propagate in the entertainment industry. And
yeah.
all of that is crazy, right? But it's really hard to get away from the fact that it's whatever the version of Kevin Costner white saviorism is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
applied to feminism.
Yeah, I mean that's a frequent issue in stories like this as well, is the idea that it takes a man to come in and correct something that women have been telling us has been a problem for a long time, for sure. You know, it's interesting that you bring this up because kind of on a very tangential, like I was kind of having these weird feelings about this exact concept, because this week the King Richard trailer dropped. It's the new Will Smith Oscar grab style film, and you know I hope he gets it. But it is the story of Venus and Serena Williams' dad. And like it's these weird feelings.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how to feel about it because it's only the trailer. I haven't seen the movie or anything. I only just saw it. But like, why do I have to watch this story about these two history-making female athletes? But it's not about them. Why is the focus on their father?
It's how their
What is
dad made them history
yeah,
making athletes,
yeah,
Sejohn.
it was so it I've had this conversation with a couple of people, and there's been a couple of things that have been brought up that are definitely important. The idea of black fatherhood being shown in a good light, because by all intents and purposes, what I can see from the preview is it looks like he's a very supportive, very like he is there for them and fights for them in very specific ways. I mean, the other thing is if it's historically accurate, I hate that people can use that as kind of a safety net to allow this kind of shit to happen, but it's not a it's not a you shouldn't ignore that fact, right? If this is something that like the Williams estate like is like, no, we endorse this film because we want this movie to be, this picture of our dad, and we do feel that he was this important figure in our success and in our life, like then I've got no leg to stand on, right? Like criticizing that element of it. So I kind of have to wait and see. Like the movie itself the reaction to that movie, and at the end of the day, I gotta know what the Williams family like feels about it. If they feel like it's accurate, if they feel like it was necessary, if they were involved or not, that sort of thing. But it's interesting that you bring up this idea of watching a feminist film, but the idea that the focus all appears to be on this male figure like saving the day is a weird way to watch a feminist film.
Yeah, it like, and that's the thing, like, and I said, I mean, this movie really resonated with me, but I'm gonna need like a couple more viewings before I'm like decided on how I feel about it, because it's not like he just jumped into it. Like, some of the drag people who hung out with Andy Warhol, like, they were consultants on the film. They never wanted it to seem like drag parody. They like went above and beyond to make sure that it was like him playing a woman, like, and not trying to make a joke of it. Like, and the way that he approached the character, like, all this stuff, like, it seems like it's pretty good stuff. Like, they had noble intentions.
Yeah.
But it like, through the lens of 2021, is really, like, some of it has not aged very well. And
Yeah,
it's very strange when you consider that there are some people who consider it the best comedy of all time. Like, that has been flung around as a way to describe this film, if not one of the best films of all time. And I'm just like, I mean, it's enjoyable and it's got some good moments. And Bill Murray's there, and he deliberately didn't get credited because he didn't want people to think it was going to be Meatballs or Caddyshack.
Yeah.
But
I mean, look, like Dangerous Art is important and necessary, and also at the end of the day, some of my favorite type of art. Like the idea that they are riding on this line of you questioning the whole time whether or not this is okay. Like I like there's a piece of me that it's not Schadenfreude, but like there is like a little like demon in me that like is like rubbing his hands together right now in excitement talking about this, right? Because I love this kind of cinema. And I mean, there's something about the idea of the time when it came out, and then and the people involved, and like you said, like there was like research and stuff involved. So like it's never at the end of the day, it's like the conversation kind of can't be about whether or not it's okay, but whether about what we do now, right? Like, and that's kind of the way to approach all like dangerous art. When people have they've done it, you're not going to stop them from doing it. So now what do we do in the aftermath of it existing? And that is often like the spotlight shown on that argument is like you're giving people a pass at that point, and like I don't disagree, and that needs to be definitely discussed. But I feel like, as you've pointed out, like Dustin Hoffman has reflected on that role since then. I feel like the big thing that we can say is, in the aftermath of that movie, is we have seen people look back on it and criticize it, but we have also seen people look back on it and talk about it being a turning point for them and realizing things. So like I understand, like, it feels really squishy when somebody says like it's the best comedy of all time, or when people out there are like it deserves to be up in the upper echelons of cinema and things like that. The fact that we are still saying those kinds of things, and we are all saying it, you know, even though only one or two of us are saying it, we're all there when it's being said, right?
yeah,
Like the fact that conversation is happening still is important and impressive. So like it's one of those movies that we definitely should never forget about, but we also shouldn't forgive it, but we also shouldn't forget about it.
right. And to go back towards my Remember the Titans things, where like, oh, we solved it, guys, so we don't need to worry about racism because Remember the Titans is a movie that exists. That's sort of what 1982 feels like in perpetuity, because the 1982 Oscar nominees feature 3 drag performances. I put that in quotes, but it's, you know, Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie. It is John Lithgow as his role as the transgendered woman in The World According to Garp, and it's Victor Victoria. And it is the most simultaneous like trans drag roles that have ever been nominated at the same time at the Oscars. And it just seems so crazy to think that, like, there's that congruence there.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is you talk about an early 1980s feminist film, and the movie that always comes to mind to me is 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I love I love that movie. And so I was quickly looking to see when it came out, and it is a couple of years before. It's 1980, so it's not 1982. So it's interesting to me to see this kind of this move by these movies that you've mentioned to really kind of explore the ways in which males perceive other genders, right? And it's not just females, because when you start talking about the world according to Garp and stuff like that, you've now opened the door to all sorts of other genders to be talked about, right? But it is all through the lens of how men look at these others, right? And so it's interesting to me that just one of the things that I consider to be one of the best like breakout feminist comedies of the 80s is 9 to 5, and that kind of actually kicks off the decade.
Yeah. I mean, and then also, I mean, Dabney Coleman is in Tootsie basically playing his character from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Like, so that seems weird. But then, like, the real, like, where I kind of got a little squishy with it all is Tootsie is apparently the direct result of Dustin Hoffman's approach to his character in Kramer versus Kramer, and playing a character who has to be both mother and father to his child.
Yeah.
And then, like, what if I had to explore being a woman in other aspects of life as a man? And, like, that's where Tootsie comes from. At least that's the story that he has gone on record about. Because there's so much contention about who wrote the script of Tootsie.
Yeah.
That, like, the film was delayed being released because so many people were claiming to be the screenwriter on it. So, like, it's a weird movie just in terms of cinematic history before you even get to all, like, the kind of squicky stuff that we're talking about.
The social history that it takes part in. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I wasn't expecting all of that. And I wasn't expecting to, like, enjoy it as much as I did. But then there's also still some, like, horrific trope traps. Like, the way, like, Terry Garr is a fantastic actor. And the way that she is treated in that film, like, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary to have that her whole storyline in the film.
Yeah, well, it is the trap of progressive art making, in that, like, there's also this element of, like, the film was progressive when it was made, and now it doesn't seem so progressive because that's just progress, baby. Like, I've talked about the Mobius snake of progress, and eventually
it's
how
a shifting scale.
It's always gonna have to eat itself. That's the way we move forward. And like I kind of want to get like a tattoo of a snake eating its own tail, but like also it's a wheel moving down a road, like like that idea of, but there's this, and it wrapped up in that are elements like, oh, well, this trope that they're leaning into. Well, they're leaning into it because they're trying to make a point about it, and so they have to show it. And it's like, yeah, but they didn't have to do that with it. It's like, it's definitely conversations we've had before, right?
Yeah, and I guess it was kind of sad that it's still talked about the way that it is.
Yeah.
Like, in the wake of that. And I guess we'll see next year, right? When it's the 40th anniversary of Tootsie, because then, like, we're kind of just getting a jump on a brief discussion on Tootsie, but when it's 40 years old, I'm sure the resurgence of, like, is Tootsie still valid in 2022 will be a discussion, if just because it's clickbaity, right? Like, it can be a good clickbait title to draw eyes to your website. So I won't be surprised if a lot of the stuff that we're briefly exploring right here becomes a bigger deal next year.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry. Is there anything else that you want to hit on? Because the last thing I want to touch on is something freaking 5 years in the making at this point.
Just some tangential 80s movie stuff, just because I was thinking about it. Honestly, also Harold Ramis, just to go back to the Ghostbusters stuff. I on a whim rewatched Orange County this week.
Nice.
And I still love that movie. We'll have to talk about it more in depth sometime, because it was like super formative for me on a lot of levels. But one of the big things that hit me this time is it's one of Harold Ramis's last full scripts that he wrote. I mean, it was years before he passed away, but he was just not pushing as much like creative work towards the end. But that being said, it is really interesting to me because I never realized how much it's kind of his swing at a Ferris Bueller style story, doing the thing that we've always talked about, making Cameron the main character instead.
Mm-hmm. I get that. That's
Of
interesting.
like that idea of what if Cameron wanting to get out of the fucking town that he's in, and like and his and the solution for this kid in this movie, we were laughing the whole time, is like Stanford, which is still in California, so he's not going too far away. They literally
Yep.
and drive back in the morning. Like he's
Yeah,
not,
I
his whole
lost you
thing
there.
about
They
wanting to quote
literally
unquote get,
what?
I need to get out of Orange County.
Siege. They literally
Oh,
what?
sorry.
Yeah, I lost you.
Yeah.
They
So
literally.
he's the whole concept where he wants to get out of Orange County. He has the line, I need to get out of Orange County, and his whole outside of Orange County is still just Stanford. He's still just in California. So they drive back in like less than a day to get to this place that is supposed to be so far away from his family. And so just there's like a pettiness on display for him that made me then think about Cameron in Ferris Bueller, in the ways in which like he is like he is still just a whiny kid who just doesn't understand how good he has it. But there is definitely elements to his story that merit like his depression and things like that. It's just really interesting the ways in which watching this movie made in 2000 made me think of that movie from 20 years earlier. And I think that we need to look at Orange County some more.
I think that's a film that I would actually need to sit down and watch, like properly. Because I remember when it came out and being told when I worked at Blockbuster, you need to see this movie. And I think I put it on in the background and didn't give it my full attention.
It's a cast that is so packed that people like Ben Stiller and Chevy Chase show up for just a second. Like like when I say cameo for those guys, it is in the truest sense. I almost wouldn't be surprised if Stiller wasn't credited, because he shows up on screen for less than 2 minutes, has a conversation with Jack Black, who he at this time had been
They're
been
best
friends with
friends.
for yeah. So like if you told me that he didn't even get credited or paid for showing up for the 2 seconds he's in the movie, I believe you. Like it's a phenomenal movie with a phenomenal cast, and like it captures the 2000s like whiny white dude attitude in a way that a lot of movies from that time like try to avoid it. In this movie just relishes in it, and I think that's the point of it. We'll talk about it more if we watch it.
No. I think time's gonna roll on, and we're gonna need other stuff to watch and elucidate on. Cool. That's interesting. I really think that Harold Ramis's entire like catalog is something that I'd like to explore, because I always forget the movies that he made, like Multiplicity. That's a
Hmm.
Harold Ramis film,
Yeah.
and it's not surprising when you consider Andy McDowell and former funny guy trying to do something serious, right? It's basically
Yeah.
Groundhog Day for Michael Keaton. Let's be honest. And
Yeah.
that's what Harold Ramis was like trying to do in the 90s. But it's something that like I would like to dive deeper and explore his entire catalog, especially after rewatching Caddyshack and seeing that like it engaged an entire generation and he is not proud of it at all. Like I would have done so much different, and I
Yeah.
don't doubt that for a second. Especially when you consider that Caddyshack was supposed to be about the caddies. And then, well, you have Chevy Chase and you have Bill Murray and you have Ted, and not Ted Knight, because Ted Knight hates it, and you have Rodney Dangerfield. Why isn't the movie about them? Well, because
Yeah.
it's about the kids. Yeah, but why isn't it about them?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he lives in that echelon for me as Thomas Lennon and Ben Garant, who famously have written some of the funniest shit out there with like just for example the Reno stuff. Like Reno 911 is just as a whole collectively some of the best comedy that's been made in the new millennium. But then on top of that, also like in order to support their careers, would dive in and write like Herbie the Love Bug, like
the
and they
pacifier is what I think of when you say those
yeah.
two names.
Exactly, right? Like they talk very openly about how like, yeah, you want to work in this business, you do different things, and you like you never half-ass it. You always put the work in. But like sometimes you got to write a Herbie movie if you want to make a Reno movie with your friends. Like that's just like that's their whole attitude, right? And Harold Ramis feels like he very much understood that. Like as a guy that was definitely successful enough to get to do the projects he wanted to do most of the time, every now and then him kind of just being like, yeah, sure, I'll write Rover Dangerfield for you, like you know, like yeah.
Why? Why you gotta bring up Rover Dangerfield? I'm having a perfectly happy Sunday, and then now I'm thinking about Rover Dangerfield.
That movie gets no respect.
No respect.
Yeah.
All right. So, something ended this past week. Something I didn't know I was expecting an ending for. Something that it has meant a small amount to me, but never really jumped into the, to borrow a phrase view, upper echelons of my mind. And that's Blaster Master Zero. I don't know if you remember talking about this game when it released 5 years ago. On this show.
I do remember kind of offhandedly, and at the time thinking that you were talking about probably an A-rated game I shouldn't know about, but now I even more think about it.
And then the sequel came out, I think maybe this was all just 2019, so maybe it's just 3 years in the making. But Blaster Master is an NES game that is significant and holds a big place in a lot of people's minds because you drive a tank around and then you can get out of the tank, and the side-scrolling switches to like a top-down Zelda-style gameplay. So like it was a lot going on in a game released in the 1980s, like that switch and everything that was going on. I think of the NES Blaster Master because of the cheat to kill every boss very fast, which is to throw a grenade and then pause the game. And then the grenade continues to do damage the time that it's paused. And then you unpause and, oh, you won the fight! Congratulations!
Right, yeah.
Like, that is Blaster Master to me in a nutshell. The other thought is Blaster Master 2, a friend of mine when I was young, so like 5 or 6, rented it and thought it was the coolest game ever. Look, I'm out of the tank now! And I'm like, yeah, but you should probably be in the tank right now because you're going to get, now you're dead. Right? Like, it's cool that you can get out of the tank, but I feel like that's for certain locations. So, Switch rolls around with its whole, like, trying to reinvigorate the old with the new and everything like that. So the Blaster Master Zero comes out, and on its surface, it's pretty much a remake of the first game.
Okay.
Right? I was recently playing through the first game, just to see how closely the two relate. And it is pretty much, you go to all the same areas, you collect a lot of the same upgrades for the tank. There's just some modernizations in how dying affects you, being able to call the tank to you, as opposed to, oh my god, I've lost the tank and now I've lost the game. Like, you could really soft lock yourself in the first game if you messed up. So playing through that, right, I really enjoyed that first game because in its heart, it's a Metroidvania. You go around with the tank until you get new abilities, and the new abilities allow you to go to different areas or to find new paths in areas that you've already been to. And it's an exciting thing. But one of the big things that they did with Blaster Master Zero was anime the story of it. So instead of just a boy looking for his frog that jumped into a hole in the backyard and stumbled upon some radioactive material that caused the frog to mutate. This is, I swear to God, the plot of the original Blaster Master game for NES.
Are we about to come back to a kaiju conversation?
No, I'm not that good. I wish I were. The hole that you fall through in the beginning of Blaster Master Zero, it is revealed, is a wormhole created by your pet frog that is in fact not a frog, but a support droid for the tank that it's led you to. So then you drive the tank, and you're killing mutants that have invaded the Earth and looking to find your frog. And along the way, this is where Blaster Master Zero heavily deviates from the original Blaster Master game, you find a support android. So, like, there's a support drone in Fred, and then there's a support android, and it's a beautiful girl named Eve. And Jason, because his only discerning, like, descriptor is that he is a world-renowned robotics genius, suddenly falls in love with this beautiful woman that he finds and saves. But she's an android. So, like, oh, they're never going to be together, right? But he loves her, and she kind of, it seems like she loves him. But what is that going to mean, right? Because at the end of the day, she's a robot and he's a man. So you go through the game, and if you find every single collectible, this is the only way to actually finish Blaster Master Zero, is to go through and find every collectible. You're taken to a final level where your tank is destroyed when the Eve is the name of the support droid. She steals it from you and goes to fight the mutant threat and is, like, destroyed by the mutants. And the tank is destroyed, and then another tank is set to you from the planet Sophia, because it turns out that there's a planet out there named after the tank that you've been driving. Obviously, the tank is named after the planet, and they're like, use this to defeat the mutant, and then that's going to be it. So you go and you defeat the mutant overlord, and Eve is corrupted by the mutant cells that get into her system, and that's the end of Blaster Master Zero. That's the end of the first game. And you're like, well, that's something, huh? They kind of took the first game, they added a down ending, they added a boy loves a robot story. It's very anime, right down to him having blue streaks in his hair, right?
All right, yeah.
So then a year later, they announced Blaster Master Zero 2, and you're like, how'd they make a sequel to a game called Blaster Master Zero, right? This is supposed to be taking place before the original Blaster Master, right? Whatever, I'm not going to question it. And in that one, in order to cleanse Eve of her mutant infection, they've retrofitted the tank that was sent to them from space to become a planetary exploration vehicle.
Excellent.
And they're going to use Fred's wormhole technology to create wormholes in space to get back to planet Sophia, hopefully to cleanse the mutant infection from Eve's body. And along the way, you find out that these little tanks have been sent all over the fucking galaxy to just planets. And then whoever finds them is suddenly a hero on their planet to fight against these mutants that are just invading.
So does he have a green tank or a yellow tank?
He has a red tank. He's a red tank.
Comes from anger.
Or love. I think it's that it comes from love. It's the passion of his love. That's why he has a red tank. So you find and you fight all these other tank drivers because they assume that you're evil when they see another tank. Because why would there be two tanks here? Mm-hmm. And eventually, again, if you collect all of the items, but this time it's because you need one of the items to defeat the final boss. And you do that, Eve goes off and is like, well, I'm going to go destroy the mutant threat again because I don't want Jason to suffer. And she finds her own tank that has been sent out into the world, and she becomes a Ma pilot. They're called Ma pilots. Metal Attacker is what that's short for. And she goes and she uses a purification beam to destroy the mutant cocoon, which is Overlord backwards. That's the name of it. So Drovororl, something like that.
Okay.
And it's just like, oh, okay. So you cleanse the mutant cocoon, and that cleansing of the mutant cocoon, that cleanses her of the mutant virus. And it's like, and then it ends with them flying to the planet Sophia, figuring that they'll be welcomed with open arms because they've just defeated the mutant threat, and everything will be fine and copacetic, right? And you think that's got to be the end, right, of this prequel game series?
Right.
But then, nope, April of this year, Blaster Master Zero 3 is coming. And you're like, how is there more? How could there possibly be more? And it turns out that the planet, when you show up in their tank named after the planet, they're like, that's a hostile force. That right there's a hostile force. And they shoot you down. and they put you into prison. And it turns out that as a defense mechanism, Eve sends herself into superdimensional space, Sejohn, which is where the mutants have been invading from this whole time. And it turns out that they're not mutants. They're called the Invum Darkstar Army. Because of course they're called the Invum Darkstar Army, right?
This this is such buck wild. This is what happens when fan fiction gets made into a video game. When fan fiction gets made into anything, is there's so much convoluted inside knowledge necessary bullshit that it's just like, at what point can I just shoot things with my tank?
Right? And that's all I really want to do is explore, find upgrades. But okay, so here's the story. So Jason is broken out of prison by Kane Gardner, who is the guy who sent you the tank in the very first game. And he's like, I built Eve, so she's like a daughter to me. You need to go and find her. So you go out into the world, but now the new wrinkle in the game is using your helmet, you're able to go into subdimensional space. And the whole game, they're like, don't spend too much time in subdimensional space. Otherwise, you might not be able to come back from subdimensional space. Superdimensional, not sub. I'm sorry. I was thinking about Super Mario Brothers 2 for a second there. Superdimensional space. And you go on this whole thing, and then it turns out that Eve has become the new queen of the mutants. She calls herself the Mutant Queen, and has decided that I'm going to sacrifice my life in regular space to be the queen of the mutants in superdimensional space, because if I'm the queen, then they'll no longer attack, right? They'll follow my orders. And the constant war between our space and superdimensional space will come to an end. But it means that her and Jason cannot be together. And then you're like, you cry because, oh my God, like, what a meaningful thing that, like, our relationship doesn't mean more than the safe and peace of the universe, right?
Right.
Only you don't get credits if you get that ending.
What?
Like, the game is like, I feel like there's more that I could have done to reverse her fate. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what that means, right? So I had played the game for 7 hours, and I was like, I thought I was done when I found Eve and had like this kind of heartwarming downer ending, right? That sort of plays on everything that I'd seen. And then I'm like, I can't move on though until I finish this game, because over the past week, I played through Blaster Master Zero 1, I played through Blaster Master Zero 2, all in preparation to complete Blaster Master Zero 3. And then to not complete it after 7 straight hours of gaming, I'm not going to stand for that. So here's spoilers for... Oh, I skipped over something. Apparently, in purifying herself of the mutant virus, Eve transcended from being a non-organic life form to being an organic life form. So Jason and her can finally be together. Which makes it all the more sad that she's going to run away into superdimensional space in order to ensure peace in the fucking galaxy.
Which honestly sounds like a good ending for
right?
this
Like,
insane
that seems like
batshit story.
And what you have to do, and here's spoilers, right? Because one of the best things about this whole Blaster Master series is that I've beaten all of the games in this series without any help or guidance from walkthroughs. The game will release, I will sit and I will bang my head against the wall until I get a credits to roll on the game. And it's enjoyable. It recaptures that feeling of gaming as a child in a way that I didn't know I needed it to be recaptured. In a way that, like, Dark Souls kind of gets it, but not all the way. Because a big part of Dark Souls is the co-op and the collaboration with other players. Not just so whatever. So what you have to do, big spoilers for how to do it, is during her whole speech with her, the visor you're wearing cracks, and it puts a noticeable crack like on the screen. And at that point, you're supposed to activate the superdimensional warp thing. So during a cutscene, you're supposed to hit a button combination. There's no indication of this. And you take off your helmet, and then you become a superdimensional being too. Only if you spent too much time in superdimensional space, though. So
Oh
you
my.
had to have played the game kind of slowly in order to distort Jason's DNA and biology. And it turns out that Eve loves Jason back, and that's why she's willing to sacrifice herself. But he's like, I'll go with you into super dimensional space, and we can be together forever. And like, yay, that's the kind of happy ending. But no, it and leads to a whole other section of the game
Oh
where
my god.
you're playing as Kane Gardner because a super dimensional rift has opened on planet Earth and they're afraid that the mutants are going to attack again. So Kane Gardner has been sent to go and eliminate Eve and Jason for breaking the tenets of peace. And all that is an excuse to reuse the maps from Blaster Master Zero and reuse the boss fights against the other tank pilots from Blaster Master Zero 2.
Wow. Oh man, this
And
game
then
sounds like it went so far up its own ass.
I just like, I couldn't. But then the coolest thing, right, is that you get to the end, and that's when it's fully revealed that it's Kane that you've been controlling in this whole thing, as he confronts Jason. And it comes up and it says, you know, Sophia J1, which is now what Jason is calling his tank, or I don't remember the name of Kane's Metal Attacker. It just says Metal Attacker. And when it's telling you that it's Metal Attacker versus Sophia J1, depending on which one is on the screen where you hit the A button, that's which one you control in the final fight of the game. So it can be Jason to prevent Kane from stopping him, or Kane to stop Jason.
What is the right item?
Sejohn, this ties back into a question of choice that we were talking about with games like Biomutant and Resident Evil 7. Doesn't fucking matter which one you finish the game as. Same ending plays out.
Yeah.
And I confirmed that this morning at 7 o'clock, where I'm like, I need to try to beat Jason as Kane. Because the first time I beat Kane as Jason, not knowing that you could pick who you were fighting as.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, I can do it as Kane. I'll do it that. And that's harder because I don't have any of the upgrades that I've collected throughout the game. It's just a matter of learn the patterns and get lucky. And I did it in 4 tries, so I felt pretty good about it. That like, I figured out how to do it without putting in too much time and effort and energy.
I just gotta know, nice. Like, besides a guy like you that is just out of your fucking mind when it comes to this stuff,
yeah,
who is this for, right? Like who,
other people like me. Like I apparently
that
represent.
Cannot be a big enough market, right?
I don't know. I mean, it's really for like people who want that NES hard experience. It's for people who like Metroidvanias. It's for people who like platformers. Like, there's enough of a thing. Like, I was having conversations with people about the game after I completed it. Like, I watched someone do the final fight as Kane, and I'm like, I'm really not looking forward to this. And he's like, yeah, I mean, you just got to learn the patterns. It's like original Blaster Master. So if you've played the original game, you'll probably be okay. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I'll be fine. And like, but it was cool having that, but you're not wrong. Like, this isn't being streamed by the top streamers on Twitch right now. I had to go and dig to find people who were playing the game.
I mean, like, I guess I'm happy that this kind of development can exist in the world. Like, the idea that there can be people out there that are making this kind of stuff and they are celebrated within their crowd, and niche markets are nothing to be, like, you know, I shouldn't turn my nose up at it. It's just that, like, there's a point at which it feels like this kind of work is done purposely to keep me out of the loop, right? And maybe that's a very selfish thought, but it's just like I want to be there. I want to celebrate this. I want to be excited for your work and your fans and all of this. But fuck me, I just can't, like, I can't keep up. Like, it feels like it's purposely obtuse to somebody like me. And maybe it is. Maybe that's the idea, is like, you know, if you don't get it, you're not part of the club. But man, fuck that attitude.
Well, but I mean, and you're not wrong. Like, games should try to be inclusionary, right? Like, it should try to, anyone should be able to be an audience member for this game. But then, like, this game, I mean, from the start, I don't think you would enjoy this game. If you had played Blaster Master Zero, like, starting it off, I think you'd feel the way that a lot of kids in the 80s felt when they first played that game. And, like, like PJ being like, it's so cool because you can get out of the tank, and then he died because he was out of the tank, and he's like, this game is stupid. I don't want to play it anymore. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
okay, but like you gotta explore, and like, oh, the tank can't get in there, so that's when you get out of the tank. You're not supposed to just be walking around as the guy. Like,
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, like in some ways, like it's not that I want the game to cater to me specifically, because I'm clearly not its audience, but it should be open to me, right? And I
yeah,
think the thing that gets me is that not on this game, not in this example, not going on in this community as far as I know, but there are people in the gaming community that feel the opposite of what you just said, the idea that games should be inclusionary. There is a subsect of gamers with capital G that really feel like games, that some games should not let you in. Like if you're not in the club, you don't get to go in the door. Like that is there is a type of gamer that believes that. You know, Dark Souls is the prime example. We've talked about this. The get good attitude can really be really problematic. You know, on the one hand, like if you're being supportive in that and you're saying like, no, like it is a game that it does require you learn how to play, but here's how. Like, let's talk about things that you can do to, like, you know, to dedicate time and things like that. Whereas there's people out there that are just like, get good. If you don't have time to do it, then you're not then you're not in this community. Too bad. Like, it's just like, no, man. Like, like, and so that's where when a game like this comes along that feels that way, my first reaction is a cringy one, is because I know that in other communities of games like this, there's a group of people that feel like, well, this game's not for you, and it's just like, ouch, man. Like, fine, like go fuck yourself then. If this is not for me, then we're done here. Bye. Like end of conversation. That's just no, that's not fun, man.
I think this is a unique one because you don't get an ending if you don't 100% the game, and I think that that's the strangest thing of all.
Yeah.
Like, it really bothered me that I'm like, I know that I have to do something here. Did I miss the ability to, like, get that ending because I did something wrong? Like, do I have to fight the boss differently? All the talk of the word reverse in the final, like, discussion, I went back to the final boss fight and I noticed that, like, what I thought it was, like, there's something else I want to discuss about the Blaster Master Zero series, because it's really interesting how it reflects what's going on in the world around it in terms of indie game design and what is popular at the time.
Okay.
Like, the first game is very much just a Metroidvania, and it was designed in a time where, like, Metroidvanias, but with crazy stories, were kind of what were being done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, anyone can make a Metroidvania. Blaster Master's already a Metroidvania. Oh, okay, but now they're adding, like, crazy stories. We'll be perfect. We can throw our hat into the ring. We'll get a bunch of sales off of nostalgia alone. Plus, anybody who's, like, just kind of playing indie games right now, it will appeal to them on that level as well.
Right.
Right? So there's that whole thing. And then you come along to Blaster Master Zero 2, and it's a lot of, like, oh, okay, so now in platformer games, there's, like, weird logic stuff going on. Like, you need to think outside the box in order to solve the problems that you're going to come up against. And also, people don't want big interconnected universes anymore. They want small, contained areas that you travel between. Right? Because that game's a lot of going to a planet, finding a path to another planet, and then going to a different planet. Like, they're small, contained, condensed maps. Right. And it's like, oh, okay. And the other thing that one is real indicative of is if you want side quests, you have to go looking for them. Side quests are not something that you're going to just stumble upon naturally. You need to go out of your way to discover the extra gameplay, right? Okay. We're looking for a level of dedication from you. And then Blaster Master Zero 3, it does something that I never thought I would enjoy a game that did this, and it's procedural generation. Mm-hmm. It is like I can't think, that's what it's called, right? Like the roguelike where the dungeon changes every time.
Yeah, procedural generation usually goes hand in hand with roguelikes, but it's not
Okay.
necessarily just a roguelike thing. But yeah, the idea that you're going to drop into this place and the thing is going to change on you, and it's going to be based off of pretty um after a while pretty obvious mechanics, what merits a tea room here and what merits a cross room there, and things like that, and why there's going to be treasure chests here in this room and monsters in that room, that kind of thing. Yeah, but that is super popular right now for sure.
Yeah.
Like that's been something in the water for about 3 or 4 years now that people just fucking love because it allows you to do the looping, playing, getting better thing while also keeping it interesting, keeping it fresh.
Right. And there are certain dungeons in the game called Sophia Force dungeons that are procedurally generated. It is never the same each time through. And
Interesting.
really that's any dungeon that takes place in super dimensional space
Yeah.
is going to be a different layout every time you go in there. And that was kind of interesting in the way that it did it because the main exploration of the game was still like this is a set map and you need to remember certain places to go once you have the certain item to use there. So like it scratched that Metroidvania itch, but then also these optional areas were procedurally generated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was cool to like have your cake and eat it too. It was a cool way to answer that because if the whole game were procedurally generated, I know that I wouldn't have finished it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because there are some games that have employed this mechanic before, and the big one that comes to mind for me is the Legend of Zelda Curse of the Necro Dancer crossover that they did, because it is exactly that. Is the idea is that the overworld map is going to be the same every time, but the dungeons the that you go into will be procedurally generated, and the loot that you get from them, by that nature, will also be. So while the map is exactly the same, you may only find like the heavy boots up front this time, so that allows you to go up to Death Mountain and get through the things there. Whereas the next time through, what you might find is the boomerang here. So that means that you have to go into a different place, and so you have to wait on doing Death Mountain this time as you play through. So it has that overworld map that stays the same, but then the dungeons are different, which. So it was this really nice kind of combination of, on the one hand, you get that Zelda-esque, I know where everything is on the map and I know where to go. Now that I've got this, I can do this dungeon, I can do that dungeon. But then it also employed the Curse of the Necro Dancer random event stuff that makes that game so good. And so I really love that ability to replay that game and have it be slightly different. So this is, again, just as you were pointing out, this is just something that's been in the water with indie gaming, and so I I think it's a really interesting way to employ it as well because again, it keeps things interesting, right? Some games, like I think Borderlands just did this when they did their Axton and who's the gunner from two. Um,
Oh,
Salvador,
so yeah,
the accident Salvador DLC that they put out, where they basically do that exact kind of thing, and it is so far removed from the game that it came out like 6 months after the game came out. So some people probably aren't even aware that it exists, right? So like it's being employed in various ways, and so I'm glad that you found one that you've enjoyed and you've experienced because I don't know if I could have convinced you to try one any other way.
yeah, and then and I didn't realize it until that one time that I died in the dungeon, and I'm like, oh, this is different. The unfortunate thing about that is it trivialized those dungeons for me. It didn't become about solving the rooms. It came about finding the exit as fast as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it really was only an obstacle because occasionally a room would be a boss encounter where you had to defeat everything in order to progress.
Yeah.
So
It definitely removes the 100% feeling that that's why it's so interesting in this particular case, in the Metroidvania sense of get all the tools, explore everywhere, 110% this game. That you can't do that in procedural generation because at some point there's it's not worth it. At some point it's dangerous. At some point there's no reward for the risk, and so why keep going that way?
yeah. And so it was interesting to see it here. And then I'm going to loop it all back to the final fight. And because the other thing that changed is your combat when you're outside of the tank. The first one, it's basically copy paste from the first Blaster Master. As your gun powers up, like shots travel further, or like they have an electric or fire effect to them.
Hmm.
And then the second game, it really sort of changed the type of shot that you were doing. Like at level 5, you were, instead of shooting, were putting up a shield and you could reflect other things that were attacking. And at
Hmm.
level 6, like you had an energy whip. Now in this game, you have 5 different types of shots: regular shot, spread shot, energy whip, like a sort of target everybody and shoot them with electricity, and then the standard, like, DNA shot is what it's called because it looks like a helix as it goes across the screen.
Nice.
So it's cool that, like, as you power up the gun, each one of these types of shots gets stronger. And it's been interesting to see because, like, the second game implemented a counter system because countering attacks was so big because of Dark Souls and
Yeah.
everything else that, like, finding its way in. And this one, the counter system is still there, but, like, the counter and dodge were sort of connected. So now in 3, the counter and dodge are on separate buttons. So, like, you can only counter certain things, and other times you just need to know to dodge because countering will get you hurt.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see how this series has grown and changed because of what's going on around it. But that final boss fight, you're fighting a heart, and it changes the colors that are associated with your gun, between the 4, not them being like helix shot, because that just does damage whatever. So I beat it the first time. I got the sad ending, and then the reverse. If you look at the heart on the outside, there's there's another color represented. So I thought, oh, I have to defeat this with the outside weapon, not the inside weapon, and that will, like, defeat whatever's corrupting the heart, and then the heart will be free. Because they talk about the word heart about a million fucking times as well.
Right.
So then I finally beat it that way, and I'm like, I did it. I can't believe I did it doing it this way. This seems like the harder way to do the fight, but whatever. And then it's still like the same ending was going to run. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, reverse. I mean, that's, you take off the visor to reverse things. Let me just try it. And, like, so I just kind of stumbled upon the solution.
Yeah, which is the way that it should be,
Should be,
right?
right? Exactly. I'm
You
glad.
should be able to discover it. I just the bullshit nonsense of a code in a cutscene, not like that is the level of obscurity that I'm talking about, where you have lost me.
Yeah.
Like how were you ever supposed to know that unless you were A, in the community and talking to people and they told you, or B, dedicating so much time and so much headspace to solving this that you literally, that's all that you did until you solved it, right? Is like, and I don't, I that's there's and there, and like I said, there is a subsect of people that would say that's what you do, and it's just like, I like, come on, man. Like, I understand that, but like, games are also supposed to be fun at some point. Like it stops being fun to do that, you know?
Right. Like, it was after an hour after finishing the game of bashing my head against it where I was like, I need to stop, right? Like, we're supposed to watch a movie. It's supposed to be a new movie with the family. But, like, I'm so distracted that I can't walk away from this. I won't be fun to watch a movie with. I won't really enjoy the film. I need to figure this out. And, like, I was ready to throw in the towel, and I'm like, this is it. Even if I don't finish it, I need to step away from the game because I'm just doing myself a disservice at this point.
Right.
And then I'm like, and I hit those, like, maybe it's this. And it did it, and then 3 more hours were added to my experience with the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It was just like this weird thing, and it, like, I never really thought of the evolution of the indie game, but the Blaster Master Zero series became a cool distillation of everything that's going on. And it really opened my eyes once I saw the procedurally generated stuff.
I
Like,
think it
how
would
much.
help.
Yeah.
No, I think it would help a lot of indie developers to really consider the question, you've won, but at what cost? This idea that, like, when your ideal player does everything, gets all of the secrets that you want them to, they sit back and they think about and reflect on your game. they've beaten your game, but at what cost? And if the ending for a lot of people really is, thank God I'm done, I never have to touch this thing again, that's probably not a good feeling for people to be walking away from your game with, right? Like when one or two people are like, that was so difficult, it was so rewarding, I'm happy, that's great. But when the majority of your audience is literally throwing the controller down in success and saying, fuck you, game, I never have to look at you again, is that the attitude you want people to have with your game?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I was insistent on having this long diatribe and discussion and just telling you all of this stuff about Blaster Master Zero that is not going to affect your life in any way, right, Sejohn?
Right,
Like,
right,
you're not going
right.
to carry it with you, is because right now it is fresh in my mind,
Hmm.
right? And when Blaster Master Zero 2 came out, I'm like, oh, I need to replay the first game. And I'm like, oh, this is good. There's some issues here, but I'm still going to play the second one because I want to see where the story goes. And then, like, the changes and stuff, and I realized it. But then, like, it's a much longer game, but it didn't have any space in my head because I was really just kind of happy to be done. And then the third one, I'm like, oh, I need to replay the first two again because I don't really remember what happened. There's nothing lasting about these games, right? So if
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
talk about it right now, while it is freshly like burned and branded into my mind, I probably wouldn't be able to discuss them until I picked up and played them again for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because I was convinced that, like, oh, I'll play through Blaster Master Zero and it'll be quick because I've already beaten it. I know what I have to do. It still took me 6 hours to play through the game again. And then ditto with the second one. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. It was an interesting experience, and I thank you for allowing me to share it. And one other thing I'd like to share, and then I think we'll be ready to send this one off to them. You know Mega Man 3? Like, you
Yeah,
know Mega Man 3?
yeah.
Historically, I hate Mega Man 3. I think it is my least favorite of the Mega Man
Yeah, I was
games.
gonna say, I think we've talked about the fact that it's not the best, but yeah, yeah.
I mean, some people think it is the best, right? And that's the beautiful thing about communities, right? Everybody is entitled to their opinion. I realized something today. I was playing it earlier this morning, and I realized that the checkpoint in Gemini Man's level may be one of the most beautiful examples of in game tutorials without it telling you what to do explicitly ever put to, like, videotape or whatever, like, however you would call it, ever put to, I guess, motherboard, circuit board, chip. I don't know how cartridges work. Because it teaches you in 1 second how to use all three types of rush adapters.
Yeah.
Because you have to use coil if you're going to platform. There's water, so it will teach you about the rush marine, or you can just fly over it with rush jet. And I never really appreciated how it, like, visually teaches you there to
Yeah,
use the
yeah.
rush stuff. Like, no one comes up and says, oh, Mega Man, you have to use the rush stuff to proceed. It's just like it expects you to figure it out. And it gives you the option to use all of them. Because if you're playing that game, that's probably the last level that you're going to play following the weaknesses of the bosses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
But
a, yeah,
it's an interesting use of ludological teaching as opposed to narratological teaching. You don't have a NPC that comes up and explains what's to do in a series that kind of famously just has a lot of over talking to explain what needs to be done next.
yeah. And that's it. So as much as I don't like Mega Man 3, I did want to give a concession to those people who know that I don't like it.
A small mea culpa.
Yeah, that is still a moment that it really impressed me today while I was just dicking around with it to kill time.
Nice.
All right.
Excellent, man.
So that's a lot for me. Anything else that you want to make sure we put down in this Sunday brunch time episode?
Um, no, I'm in the process of trying to find the next game that I'm gonna like spend a lot of time on. Although I will say that I did just start a run of Skyward Sword, so I'm excited because we just landed from the sky and onto the earth in Faron Forest, and have started kind of working our way through that. So that's gonna definitely take up some time. But I'm very purposely playing it with the family. Like it's that Zelda game that we all kind of missed because of when it hit on the Wii. And so we're dedicating some good family time to that. So that's gonna be fun. But I'm looking for that one on my own that I can be doing, on and off. I've like restarted and kind of fallen away from a few different things like Destiny and Borderlands. I kind of started a new run in because the director's cut came out, and I've been enjoying some of the director's cut content with my character that I had been playing with all along. But I wanted to see if there was like any merit to the idea of starting a new character and experiencing like the new stuff in it and the stuff available to me with a new character. And there is. It's just that I've played so much of that game that I just don't have it in me to do a full run of another character right now, or at least not the desire. So I don't know. I'm just gonna see what I land on.
Excellent. For me, just if you want suggestions, I'm gonna dip into the Pixel remake of Final Fantasy because I beat all those other versions of Final Fantasy last year. So
Yeah.
it seems almost irresponsible not to do another one.
Which one is six? Is the one with like the opera in it and stuff, right?
Yeah. So right now, the only Pixel remasters that are available are 1, 2, and 3,
Yeah.
which is impressive because it's the first time that 3 has been released in America with an English translation and 2D graphics.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm excited to do that, but the bread and butter one for me is Final Fantasy. So if that sells me, then I'll spend the more money on 3. But right now, sight unseen, I'm not super ready to jump into Final Fantasy 3 a second time.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
good, but it's long.
Do they fix the numbering with this too?
Yeah, the numbering has been fixed since the PlayStation 1 days when they started
Okay.
re-releasing them.
Okay.
Final Fantasy Anthology called US 3.6 for the first time,
Yeah.
and then Chronicles called 2.4 for the first time, and then Origins admitted that there was a Final Fantasy 2 released in Japan. So
Yeah, I know that they're doing 4, 5, and 6 by
Yeah.
October of this year or something like that.
that's what the
It's-
hope is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think October 26th is the release date. Don't quote me on that. I think that might just be placeholder for the bundle. If you buy the bundle, you'll have everything
Right.
by that date.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that I've been looking into these actually in this process, but I've only really kind of looked at the bundle, and so I wasn't even aware that you could buy them individually. So
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah, so that's why I'm going to dip my toe with this one and then go from there. And it shouldn't be that long a dip, but also something I'm finally going to do Horizon Zero Dawn. I've been saying that for a while, but I'm going to try to do it as scheduled gaming. Like,
Okay.
I'm going to do it at night after everybody goes to bed. I'm going to try to put an hour of my time into it.
That's an interesting thought. I myself, I completely that's the problem with that game for me personally. I understand like so many people out there love it. It got tons of praise and recognition and like it's not that the world seems to keep forgetting about it. I personally don't know why, but I just keep forgetting about that game.
Breath of
to
the
the point
Wild.
where I have
It's
bought
Breath
a
of the
copy
Wild.
of it.
That's the reason. It's because Breath of the Wild came out like 2 weeks after it, and it's essentially the same game, but with the Nintendo brand on it.
Well, maybe that's it then. Maybe that's the one that'll get me because I do have a copy of it in this house, so I should break into it.
Yeah, right. And if we're doing it together, that might be something to discuss on the show. Who knows?
Nice.
Content creation? What could that be?
Jesus,
Yeah, right.
are we accidentally okay at this sometimes? Yeah.
Dude, we have a plan for July of 2022. We better be okay at this if we're going to get there to discuss some people's favorite Bruce Willis movie, I imagine. That might not be true for anybody, but it's probably somebody out there's favorite Bruce Willis movie. Right?
I mean, there's definitely people out there that don't love Bruce Willis but do love themselves some Meryl Streep. So yeah, I bet you that they would say probably if you asked them what their favorite Bruce Willis movie was, Death Becomes Her would probably be at the top of the list.
Right. All right. So if that's it, I think that's everything from us. If not, we still need to end this one because the waiter's been kind of giving us that look like brunch ended 2 hours ago, guys.
Yeah, I gotta go get me some actual breakfast tacos.
All right. So if you would like to suggest other games that Sejohn might be able to pick up and dive into if these ones don't work out for him, he's on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you have any other pre-Jurassic Park CGI style films that you think we should take a look at, kind of since we're going to hold off on Death Becomes Her, you can let Devin know at Devin D. Decker.
Oh, actually, that reminds me. Pre-CGI films reminds me. Josie and the Pussycats, our very special episode dropped last week, It's only available through podcast services. We don't put up the very special episodes on YouTube unless they're more than 4 hours long. Hint, hint. Why Justice League is out there if you're looking for something to watch. When we had looked into the people and where they'd gone from Road Trip, the new guy, right? That didn't come out till 2002. DJ Qualls took a year off after Road Trip before jumping back into the world with the new guy, with a one-time director, Ed Dector. So that was fun to look into.
Weird piece of news that you didn't know
Like,
you needed.
I didn't know
There
I
you
needed
go.
it, but like, I'm like, oh, the new guy. I need to look into it. And I'm like, Ed Dector directed one thing. Huge in Hollywood, directed one time, and it was the new guy. Poor dude.
I got it. Hey man, I love the new guy. I can see why you decided to bring it up though, because the CGI Seth Green at the beginning of Josie and the Pussycats is something to behold.
Dude, the CGI in Josie and the Pussycats is something to behold. Like how they computer generated inserting all of the consumerism in commercials. But listen to the episode for more of that, because right now, Will, you gotta get us out of here. Have a good night, folks.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.